Tim Ryan was recently on MSNBC talking about the supposed divide between coastal elites and the sort of rural center. Let's take a look at the video and then we'll talk about it.
Joining me now is Congressman Ryan. You were certainly up late, so welcome. I'm glad to have you this morning.
Thank you.
You were up on stage with 9 other colleagues. It was a crowded house, but you had a very different message there amidst 2 hours of overwhelmingly progressive messaging. And you said the Democratic candidate needs to pay attention to the whole country.
Yeah.
What did Ohio voters, who you know best, what did they hear?
I think there was a lot of going over their head. Who's talking about my wages? I mean, did we hear anything about wages last night? You know, we heard about raising taxes. We heard about, which a lot of us are for a lot of these things, but you've got to talk to the worker and the family that's struggling day to day. They're not talking about Trump. They're not talking about all these policies. They want to know you care about them. And that's my fear, is that we're walking down a road of, we're going to take your insurance away from you if you have health insurance. We don't understand your day-to-day activities and stresses and anxieties. And if we miss that, that's how Trump got in the first place. That's basically what I'm trying to say. Look, we just did this. And if we do it again, he's going to win again.
Okay, well, he won last time not talking about policy. He doesn't currently govern focused on policy. But last night, for all of you, it was policy focused.
Yeah.
And that is how you won the midterms. So what's the right combination?
Well, I think we won the midterms because our candidates in a lot of those races were talking about lunch bucket issues. Sherrod Brown won Ohio. We're talking about the dignity of work. The candidates, the 30 or 40 candidates that won for us to get us the majority, they were talking about lunch bucket issues. Someone gave me some really good advice when I first started politics. They said, nobody cares what you know until they know that you care. And I don't think that the working class people know that we care about them right now, and so they don't care about our policies.
So the people in Ohio who might not like the president's policies, they might not like his motivation, they like the idea of America first. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's what Democrats are giving them?
Well, no. I mean, our message is muddled. Of course we want America first, and because that means they're first, that means their family is first, that means you're going to put them first. And if we don't connect with that emotion, there's not going to be any policy. And that's what I was trying to say. If we, how are you going to beat Mitch McConnell? How are you going to win the Senate back? How are you going to win a Senate seat in Iowa? How are you going to win a Senate seat in North Carolina? How are you going to win a Senate seat? You want to go down and play in Georgia and play in Florida and play in Kansas. You want to play in Iowa. Those are lunch bucket communities.
Okay, but then last night was your shot.
Yeah.
Why not take a shot at Elizabeth Warren and say, how are you going to pay for that? You are going to rock this system and reelect the president. Why not do that? You had a moment. You had 2 hours.
Yeah, well, I had 7 minutes. And I stood up there and called out coastal elites and Ivy Leagues. I mean, I couldn't have been more direct than really a lot of people on the stage. And look, I like everybody. This is not like a personal thing. It's just like the perception of our party is coastal and Ivy League. And I called that out, and I was the only one who did it, and I'm going to continue to do it, and hopefully we'll continue to get traction.
You're obviously running.
Now, there's a lot to talk about here, but the first thing I want you to notice about this is he claims to be talking about a divide between, on one hand, the coastal elites, and then on the other hand, these rural voters. But notice what he's actually talking about. Notice when he gives examples, what he's actually talking about is a supposed divide between the left base and the Rust Belt. So he's saying that you can't have both. That if you want to get the left base, then you also can't get the Rust Belt because they're on different sides of the political spectrum. He's using this same old logic, touting it as if he's telling us something new. This same left-right, there's a single line spectrum, and people don't, they have preferences on these issues, and they don't really cross over. And to some extent, that's true, right? To some extent, that's true. But there's also a dimension of up and down, which he doesn't seem to acknowledge. Now, the one point which he was right on was saying that you have to make them feel first. You have to show them that you care. Now, what does that translate into? What it actually translates into, you have to show them that you're going to fight for them. So how do you show people in the Rust Belt, in these poorer communities, that you're going to fight for them? Well, you show them with these left-wing issues. You show them with things like Medicare for All, which, by the way, Medicare for All is supported by 70% of Americans. 59% of Americans support having a top marginal tax rate of over 70% for those making over $10 million. That was AOC's plan. And then 61% support Elizabeth Warren's plan, Elizabeth Warren's wealth tax, including nearly half of Republicans and 3/4 of Democrats. So don't tell me that those ideas are not popular, because they are. That is the definition of popular. That is why it is called populism, because they are popular ideas. And so this real divide that's actually going on is a divide between moderate centrists, such as yourself, and the Rust Belt. That's the reason why we can't get the Rust Belt. That's the reason why Democrats are struggling, because of people like you. Think about Hillary Clinton. She's as centrist as they come, and yet she didn't win the Rust Belt. That's why Donald Trump won, because of the Rust Belt. And you're going to tell me that you can solve this issue, or that you understand this issue better by, you're going to try to triangle us. And so, by the way, triangle is a political science term, the idea being that by being a moderate, you can actually transcend the political dimensions of left and right. So it's called triangle theory. It's basically a joke. It's basically a joke. There's a lot of memes about it. But look, I want to point out, though, that this is becoming increasingly popular. Or this is becoming increasingly important, because building this coalition needs to happen now. So according to the Global Climate Project, if we had began reducing global emissions, which, by the way, is considered, if you support, if you're an environmentalist, then, there's no way you're ever going to get the Rust Belt. That's completely wrong. You just have to show them, you have to connect it to them with their daily lives. Because I get it to an extent, right? If you don't know where your next bill is coming from, who cares about the penguins? What are the penguins? What are the penguins to do with me? Right? But if we can show them that we care, and then show them how the climate actually affects crop yields and their way of life, their standard of living, that climate change is destroying their way of life, then I think, we're going to win the Rust Belt. So according to the Global Climate Project, if we had started reducing global emissions in the year 2000, we would have only had to do about 2% reduction a year. 2%. That's doable. Now, if we started today, literally, if we started today as I'm recording this video, we would have to do 5% a year reduction. So nearly 20 years later, just a few percent. But if we wait even a decade, even just 10 more years, we're going to have to reduce by 9% a year. Now, I'm going to be frank with you. I think this terrifies me. It actually terrifies me, because I think even some of the strongest left-wing coalition might not be able to get something like that done, especially when you're talking about international actors. I mean, it is terrifying. And so we need to get this coalition together. We need to fight, and we need to build this left-wing coalition, because, first of all, it's the only coalition that can beat Donald Trump. And second, which, by the way, is clearly important, because we only have 10 more years left. We want to keep the average increase of temperature below 2 degrees Celsius, which is what that study's about. If we want to beat Donald Trump, if we want to fight against climate change, we have to build this coalition. And the only way to do that is to eschew this kind of centrist dogma that we hear, that was just being spouted out by Tim Ryan, that's being spouted out by people like Joe Biden. And then, some people really dislike Kamala. Look, I'm more on the left than Kamala, but at the very least, she's pretending to be. She's pretending to be with us. I don't believe her, but at least she's pretending. I mean, not that I think she's a liar or anything, but I don't think that she's as progressive. If you look at her record, I don't think that she's as progressive as she is portraying herself to be in this campaign. That's all I mean to say. But look, what's the saying that hypocrisy is the homage which vice pays to virtue. So, at least we're getting hypocrisy now, and hopefully that'll lead somewhere, but we'll see.